Now, I wish that the basics of dog training only ever included good behavior and never included bad behavior, but our dogs do sometimes do things that we don't want them to do. So, a good question would be, when and how do I correct bad behavior? And since we're discussing unwanted behavior, we also need to discuss punishment. Physical and harsh punishments do work. They do deter unwanted behavior. I won't deny that. However, studies have shown that it is not more or less effective than reward-based training, even for severe behaviors such as aggression. Now, that might sound confusing to folks who swear by that you need to use punishment methods for difficult dogs or for the fastest results. And the people who say that need to remember that more recent studies have shown that the easiest method of dog training is the one you are used to. So this may seem somewhat intuitive, but they actually studied it. They had dog trainers who use a particular method, either reward-based or punishment-based training methods, swap. So they had them work with dogs using the methods they don't typically use. And what they saw is what we would expect. They saw that the most effective method of dog training is the one they were used to using. And as soon as they needed to switch methods, it became harder. This is obvious, right? Change is hard. Learning a new way is hard. But that doesn't make the new way worse. So you might be thinking, then why should I change? If it's more effective and easier for me to use the method I have been using, if that's punishment, then why change? Well, punishment has been studied and shown to increase the risk of fearful and aggressive behavior in dogs. This isn't just me saying this. Again, these are old studies and they're repeated studies up until modern day. And then the common feedback I get from people is, well, those must have not been well-timed punishments. But actually, the majority of these studies had professionals applying the punishment. So it's not to do with the timing, it's just to do with the method. Punishment-based training methods, physical punishments, increase the risk of fearful and aggressive behavior. There is a reason for this that we can somewhat conceptualize here in this presentation. Those who utilize punishment like to think of it as a chisel, where you can delicately chisel away at one particular behavior. But punishment is a lot more like tear gas. You can aim it at one thing, but it will dissipate and taint everything in its surroundings. So for example, let's say you're walking your dog on a prong collar. The dog sees another dog out on a walk, and what do you think they do? Imagine they're a puppy. What are they going to do? They're going to pull towards that other dog, and boom, they get a prong collar correction. Now we know, the human knows, that that correction was because the dog was pulling. We want to chisel away at that one behavior, pulling. But for the dog, it's a lot more like tear gas. Everything in the surroundings might now be tainted. So that puppy who pulled towards the other dog and was given that correction, that harsh physical correction, now might view other dogs out on walks as a bad or scary thing. And I don't think it's too much for anyone to imagine how that can become much more problematic than simply pulling on leash. As a dog trainer, I can say dealing with a reactive dog who has been punishment trained is incredibly difficult behavior modification. Dealing with a puppy who pulls on leash is not difficult behavior modification. So we're essentially taking what was a small problem behavior and turning it into potentially a massive problem behavior. I love this quote, correct the training, not the dog. So then how do we deal with unwanted behaviors? Some dog trainers will even tell you that positive reinforcement trainers don't deal with unwanted behaviors. We simply ignore them. And that's just not true. That's a myth. We do absolutely deal with unwanted behaviors. We just do so in a more systematic way. But I can teach you that system. So step one to dealing with an unwanted behavior is management. Management is the foundation. When your dog begins doing something that you would like to see less of, the first thing you need to do is stop and figure out a management solution. Management refers to environmental solutions to problems. So these would typically be gates, crates, leashes, putting away food items, or something like that. A common example would be if a dog is getting into the trash can, the management solution would be putting the trash can in a closet. Here's a management solution that a foster came up with for a dog who was chewing the remote. They put the remote in a jar, and therefore the dog no longer has access to it. Here's an example of me with Davy Jones. He has a tendency to jump on me when I come home, so I put a gate around the door so that he can't jump on me when I get home. Management is creating a world that fits your dog versus training, which is creating a dog that fits your world. So we have creating a world that fits our dog versus creating a dog that fits our world. And whenever I say this, people always say, yeah, that one. I want the dog that fits my world. Of course they do, right? But you can't have one without the other. Management is the first step. So it's not which dog do I want, it's where is my dog at in their training journey right now. You need management before you can do training. So management comes prior to the training. Management is the first step. Once you have successful management, then you would move on to training. But training should happen in a controlled, intentional setting. Training should not happen on the fly. This is one of the most common mistakes I see with my training clients. They are training their dogs on the fly. I'll give you an example. Recently, I showed up to somebody's house to work with their dog. Their big issue was that the dog was counter surfing and stealing items off the counter while they were trying to make dinner. This woman, as a busy mom of 3 kids, was really frustrated with this behavior. And so I asked her, "Are you currently working on it?" And she said, yes. She said, "When I'm trying to make dinner, I'll even have treats on me. And if the dog comes near me, I try to get him to sit, and then I turn around and I'm cooking again. And then I turn around and he's already doing it again. He's grabbing something off the counter and running off with it. So I try to run after him, get it back, trade him for a treat, and all the stuff." And her heart was certainly in the right place. She was trying to work with her dog, but she was not working with her dog in a controlled, intentional setting. She was training him on the fly. We would call that reactive training. And being reactive in your teaching or training is a good way to become frustrated with your dog and for your dog to become distrusting of you. So we want to be proactive in our training and teaching, not reactive. You want to teach your dog their skills or cues in a controlled context all the way to fluency. If you're unfamiliar with this word fluency, it has 2 components. The first component of fluency is a dog mastering a cue with distance, distraction, and duration. Sometimes these are called the 3 Ds of dog training. I'm sure you've heard them before. I like to think of these 3 Ds, distance, distraction, and duration, as difficulty knobs. So whenever one is all the way up, we need to try to wiggle the other 2 down. And if all 3 are all the way up, that is a really difficult situation for your dog to be in. You should be increasing these knobs incrementally and individually. So your dog should learn new cues from close up. So let's go ahead and move that distance knob all the way down. They should learn new cues in a calm setting. Let's go ahead and move that distraction knob all the way down. And you should only expect them to be able to do the cue for a split second. So let's move that duration knob all the way down. So let's go ahead and remember the situation where we had the dog stealing things off the counter. There was some distance involved. She wanted her dog to go off and sit away from her on his bed. There was a lot of distraction involved. Not only is there food out, but there's a lot of fun sounds going on, a lot of movement. It was a very distracting environment. And there was duration involved. Cooking dinner does not take a split second. Cooking dinner takes 30, 40 minutes, maybe even an hour of time. There was definitely duration involved. That is not the context to be teaching your dog a new cue like place on a bed. Instead, we want to view this as the teaching zone, where we're at a close distance, where there's no distractions, and we're not expecting any duration. In that situation, what I recommended to that client was to use management while she's cooking dinner. So the dog went in his crate or was put behind a gate while she cooked dinner. He no longer had access to the thing that was getting him in trouble. And then we began setting up scenarios where she pretended to cook dinner. So she would get all her cutting boards out and everything. She would stay close by him, put him on his place cue bed, and at a close distance, ask for sit in a calm setting. So no cooking is actually going on. It's calm setting, and only expect it for a split second. And then we slowly increase these knobs one at a time incrementally until the dog was able to handle the situation that she initially wanted him to handle. So let's go ahead and watch a video of me working on cues with my dogs with distance, distraction, and duration. To begin adding distance, I'll often use the wait cue. Here I wanted my dog to be able to do paw at a distance. So I would put food in front of him, ask him to wait, add some distance, and then ask for a paw. Eventually, I was able to remove food from the situation altogether and just have some distance. For distraction, I like to toggle between asking your dog to train with you and doing something very distracting and fun, like having them play with a toy, then toggle back into training mode. Eventually, you can even merge these so that there's the distraction of play going on while they're thinking and listening. For duration, it's important to think exponentially. The hardest part for the dog is the first 0 to 1 seconds of doing the cue. But the difference for them between 3 to 5 seconds is often not that difficult. The other component of fluency is generalization. Remember, we discussed generalization when we talked about the pitfalls of capturing, so I won't discuss it again. But basically, you need to reteach the dog their skill in a new location, in a new context, and with new people. So now that you've managed the situation, you've trained the situation proactively, not reactively, in a controlled context. Now you begin the process of application. Now you begin taking the training, taking those new skills, and applying them to a real-world setting where the dog previously had an unwanted behavior. You can go ahead and reduce management gradually and set expectations appropriately. You want to intervene before there's failure. So the nice thing about using this method for teaching a dog who previously had an undesirable behavior in a context, a new skill, is that if you've already come up with management solutions and you're used to using those, then when the dog is having an off day, you can go ahead and just reapply your management. Dog training isn't linear for dogs. They're going to have great days, they're going to have not so great days, but you just want to be trending upward. And before you know it, you'll have a dog who is reliably doing the wanted behavior in the context where they had previously been doing an unwanted behavior. Thank you so much for tuning in to the basics of dog training. I hope you're feeling ready to begin working with your dog on all sorts of new skills and you feel confident as their teacher.